Anna Paulina Luna is a Republican congresswoman from Florida. Jared Moskowitz is a Democratic congressman, also from Florida, and they both join me now. OK, Anna Paulina Luna, I find this quite extraordinary, that a white powder can be taken into the White House, breaching all this extraordinary security, left in a cubby, apparently, and nobody can work out who on earth has taken it in or left it there. What if that was ricin? What if it was anthrax? That's why this is not just a laughing matter, it's a serious matter.
Well, that's exactly my point, Piers, is that this is not the first time that drugs have been found in the White House. And obviously it signifies that there's a massive issue with security. And exactly like you said, what if some nut job brings in fentanyl, and then you have a bigger problem because people are going to die? So to my understanding, there are no drug sniffing dogs. I think that that security measure needs to be changed immediately. But it's also very frustrating that this is not the first time that this has happened at the White House. And yet they chose not to implement better measures in order to avoid this. So I think that security measures have to change. But also, I find it very alarming that this investigation was closed out so quickly. And exactly like you had pointed out, they lied to the American people about where the family was at.
Right. So much of this just doesn't add up, Congressman, because if this was a more serious substance, and it's a Class A drug, this, if it was a more serious substance, then I'm pretty sure we'd have found out who left it there. There would be an extraordinary investigation if it was anthrax, say, and we would get to the bottom of it very quickly. You can't be comfortable, surely, that someone has taken cocaine into the White House and this whole investigation's over before 2 weeks have elapsed and we have no idea who took it in there or who left it in that cubby.
Thanks, Piers. Thanks for having us. So, no, look, I don't think it's acceptable that we can't get an answer. But to be clear, this is an area that was installed by John Kelly a couple of years ago for visitors that go to the West Wing. It's for pass holders and it's for guests to leave their belongings before they go into those West Wing. It is not for people who work there on a regular basis. It's not for anyone related to the family, the Trump family or the Biden family. It's not for anyone with high-level security clearance. And those other instances about drugs being brought into the White House, those actually were found in screening. Now, I agree with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna that, there needs to be changes because obviously the fact that there's no drug-sniffing dogs at the White House, by the way, I don't think there's any at the Capitol. When we go in and out of the Capitol, I don't think there's much checking going on for drugs going in and out of the Capitol. So I think that there needs to be security protocol changes. As far as anthrax or ricin, I can't go into the details because some of that obviously was done in the briefing and is classified. But there are protocols in place and there is also technology in place to catch anthrax and to catch ricin if it were to wind up in the White House.
Really? So there's a particular way of screening for those kind of powders, but not for cocaine?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the Secret Service was very clear with us. They're set up to find anthrax, ricin. They're set up to find explosive devices. They are not set up to find drugs in and out of the White House. And by the way, that obviously was frustrating for some of us because my question to the Secret Service is, what if someone was testing your protocols to see how this would all work? And so they are having meetings with White House personnel. It seemed to be very clear that changes were coming.
Anna Paulina Luna, I mean, the White House press secretary stands at the podium and tells a blatant lie because the Biden family were there until the Friday evenings. When she says they weren't there on the Friday, that is simply not true. I found that unacceptable. And then she turned on the supposedly irresponsible media as if somehow they were the ones performing an act of misconduct by daring to ask a question about Hunter Biden potentially being the person who had left this there because, let's face it, he's got a track record of taking a lot of cocaine. She thought that was irresponsible to even be asked, whilst in her reply telling a complete untruth.
Well, I mean, I think the American people, especially media, has the right to ask questions, especially when there is so much information coming out that seemed to be conflicting initially. But, it's not the first time that the White House press secretary has said things that are not true and politically motivated. And so I agree with you. It shouldn't have happened. But again, going back to really the bigger issue here, the fact is that this has happened before at the White House. There weren't changes made. There needs to be changes made. And I feel like on the international stage, when people are looking what's currently happening, it doesn't look good for the country. They're going to think there's a bunch of cocaine cowboys running the White House, and it's simply not true. And so ultimately, we have to make sure that this one, changes, it doesn't happen again, but that also, two, people understand that you can't bring cocaine, you can't bring pot to the White House. It's just not going to fly.
Right. And Jared Moskowitz, I mean, the bottom line with this, surely, is that when it comes to the security of the President of the United States, it's got to be more secure than this, hasn't it? I mean, I've been there and it seemed incredibly secure. But when you see the ease that somebody's brought in a drug substance and left it in a cubby where apparently one person would have a key, no one can find the key, it all looks, I've got to say, pretty suspicious. The speed that the Secret Service have moved on and said, we can't find out what's happened here, I find that quite alarming.
Well, look, they did fingerprints on the bag and on the locker. They did DNA as well, and it came up inconclusive. And so, you know, they didn't give us an exact number of people. They said it was in the hundreds. They said it was above 600 folks that had been in and out of this area, they surmised, during this period of time. There is no necessary camera footage of this area. There's reasons to that I can't go into based on the location of this particular area. But look, I don't think it's satisfactory to the American people that drugs could get into the White House. Obviously, this is a Secret Service issue. It's not a Biden administration issue. It's the same Secret Service that guards all our presidents. I think Piers, quite frankly, they were set up to catch big things. And I think, quite frankly, they never thought about drugs coming in and out of the White House.
I mean, I've got to say, even as you say that, I'm staggered. I'm staggered that you would never think about people bringing drugs to the White House.
Yeah, listen, the Secret Service understood our displeasure. Yeah, I mean, look, the Secret Service understood.
I mean, you've got more knowledge than me, but are there some other fairly obvious things which they simply haven't thought about?
Well, I think they're set up for threats, Piers, and I think that's really what they were looking at, threats to the president, threats to the president's security. And so, again, I think they're looking at changes. Obviously, if these lapses existed now, these lapses have existed in other administrations because, again, there's no drug-sniffing dogs at the White House. I think it's important to say, by the way, again, because this narrative was out there and it was disproven today in the briefing, and I'm allowed to talk about this because the part isn't classified, and every other member, Democrat and Republican, heard this, is that the Secret Service concludes that this is not a room that anybody who works there or anybody related to the president goes in and out of, that this was either a pass holder or a guest that has to put stuff in these lockers before they're allowed to go into a West Wing tour.
I know, but honestly, I find that a pretty lame excuse, I have to say. You know, this is the White House. I don't care which part of it is or which cubby it is or what area it's in. This is the White House, supposedly the most secure building in the entire planet. And the idea that someone's gone in, taken cocaine in, beating the system, leaving it there, beating the system, and has now beaten the system completely because absolutely nobody can find out who the hell this was, is pretty disturbing. Anyway, thank you both very much indeed.
No, listen, I agree that it's disturbing, but for several days now, people have been saying, oh, it was Hunter Biden, it was Hunter Biden, it was Hunter Biden, because they wanted to fit that narrative, and the Secret Service concluded it's no one related to the president.
To be fair, no one's denied it was Hunter Biden. The White House were asked to and chose not to. No one's denied it. And let's be honest, Hunter Biden has an extensive track record of drug abuse. So why wouldn't he be a suspect? Anyway, they haven't denied it, just to be clear. So that's why the media is speculating. But I appreciate you both joining me. Thank you both very much indeed, Congresswoman Paulina Luna and Jared Moskowitz. I appreciate